All right, there was a lot of excitement, understandably, about Asia Wilson and Brianna Stewart facing off in the semifinal. I want to recap the series, which was a damn good series, and just see how it played out. But as well, I want to sort of look at the future and where things can go from here because I think that's sort of the interesting part. It's not going to be just a full on breakdown of the games, but more where the different puzzle pieces will fall after such a great series. Again, this series had everything. So, first of all, obviously, Sue Bird's final swan song didn't end the way she wanted it. She didn't get her John Elway finish, but and the last game, unfortunately for her, she couldn't get her shot to fall, and really that was the ultimate thing. Brianna Stewart couldn't get anybody to come with her. I think she scored about 60% of their points. Saw some stat around that amount. Well, as well, Lloyd scored points as well, but really that was it. Those two, and there wasn't a hell of a lot more happening from the Storm's other players. In terms of the whole clash between Stewart and Wilson, I would say in this game or in this series, Stewart displayed that she was the better player. Not by a hell of a lot. I think just by marginal inches. And if you want to tell me I'm crazy or whatever, fine. It's so subtle, the differences between the two. You'd love to have either or on your team, but I do think Stewart was the stronger player in that head-to-head matchup. It's been revealed today that Wilson gets the MVP for the season. Great. Again, I think Stewart's slightly the better player. I think I think Wilson's on the better team, but she's a hell of a player as well, and have no problem with her getting the MVP. Basically, in this semifinal, I think whoever had Chelsea Gray on their team between those two was going to win the win the series because truly, this playoff MVP goes to Chelsea Gray. Like at the end of Game 4, it was tied in the last minute, and she just took over. I think she scored the last 5 points and just dominated, and she dominated throughout the whole series. So she was ridiculously good. So if there is an MVP of the series, it would definitely be Chelsea Gray. The matchup between Stewart and Wilson, did it live up to the billing? Yeah, they played great. The games were great, and they went at it. And a lot of times, head to head, they were guarding each other, so that was fantastic. I think was it Bird Magic? Like I think her hoops had this that this was the second coming of Bird and Magic for the WNBA and would lead to the panacea. Well, no, I do not agree with that. Bird and Magic is a unicorn. The perfect time and place. These two played in college in the most viewed game ever and then went on to East Coast, West Coast teams even before Stern was commissioner. So he didn't rig it; it just happened by happenstance, which is fantastic. And then you take that and you mix it in three finals, and plus the two guys initially. Yeah, again, you had the whole East Coast, West Coast thing, but not only that, Berg did not like Magic early on and made no secret of that fact, which made it especially nice. Now, with these two, it hurts when Stewart talks about, she hates how they get pitted against each other and all that.
I just said before this series, I understand, we understand, people want to see us, people want to see this matchup as Chelsea Gray takes it in. She said every possession we play against each other, we're making each other better. And she told me before the game, I hate it when people try to pit us against each other. We're just good for the game and we're good for each other.
Love that mentality from Asia Wilson, and it's so true.
These she's obviously never watched wrestling, or if the WNBA people haven't gotten her ear and said, listen, the best rivalries help our sport. If you could have a subtle shot taken, wouldn't be a bad thing. I wish like a WWE promoter would get in their ear a little bit and just say, hey, you can take a shot at another player. It's not the end of the world. They should take some lessons from Martina Hingis and Serena Williams. I mean, take a look at this.
They did it. I mean, they always have a big mouth. They always talk a lot. So it happened before. It's gonna happen again. So I don't really worry about that. You know.
She's always been the type of person that just says things and she just speaks her mind. And I just guess that has a little bit to do with not having a formal education.
But unfortunately, well, I guess fortunately, I mean, you don't want people to be mean to each other, but I think Stewart and Wilson are too nice to do something like that. So the hope for, I think, the WNBA is that Stewart does go to the East Coast. So she is now going to be a free agent, and Seattle is unable to make her a core player because they made Jewel Lloyd a core player last year. So they made her a core player and they re-signed Jewel Lloyd to a 2-year contract, which makes them ineligible to core another player. And in the last offseason, Stewart was courted quite heavily by Joe Tsai and his wife and Sandy Brondello, and all of them saying, "Hey, come to New York." And she was tempted, but ultimately she decided to go back and try to get the last championship with Bird. I I hope for the WNBA's sake, I hope that she gets wined and dined again and takes up the offer to go to New York because that would be the best thing that could happen to the WNBA because then she could pair with Inescu and the Liberty are instantly a championship contender. And I would love to see, regardless of what happens in these upcoming games, if the Aces go ahead and win the championship, great. She has one championship, Stewart has two, and now they can take the respective teams and do it. If the Aces don't win in the finals, well, even better because okay, Stewart can now be the roadblock to prevent Wilson from getting her championship, which would be another great storyline. But the whole New York first versus the West Coast, preferably be the Sparks, but of course, the Sparks. Chelsea Gray winds up going to the Aces, and all your great players. Parker winds up going to Chicago and everything else. Just the total mismanagement's decimated your team. So it has to be West Coast. It's going to be the Aces. Hell, at least it's not Sacramento. So sorry, Sacramento. That was a nasty shot. But it would be great if she did go to New York. Stewart did because you'd have that whole East Coast West Coast thing and just an instant built-in rivalry that would be fascinating to watch. I would love that. At the same time, the whole situation is interesting because Stewart is at the same crossroads that Bird was a few years ago, where Lauren Jackson had injured her knee and career was coming to a premature end because of injuries. And it was whether do I leave or do I double down on Seattle and think they can rebuild and go back to the promised land. And she ultimately went back to Seattle, and it worked out for her. And that might be the same thing Stewart should do. It was interesting during the press conference that Sue Bird, I mean, she was candid. Somebody asked her, how do you go about rebuilding in this league? And she's like, well, they're not going to like to hear it, but you got to tank and get a franchise player like a Brianna Stewart, and that's what Seattle will need to do because they're going to need some more horses if they're going to get back into the championship. Because even with 40 on 60% shooting or something like that, it was ridiculous. They still came up short. They didn't even make it to the finals with that. So she needs more running mates to get her there, and it's going to be her choice. Do I go to the potential ready-made finals of New York and a bigger market, obviously, with more exposure near Yukon, where I used to play, and everything else, and just take it on, and here we go? Or do I stay with the roots and double down on Seattle and go the sort of Sue Bird path? And that's going to be fascinating to watch, and I can't wait to see what's going to happen. I mean, if New York could get a winner in the WNBA because the Knicks have been so bad for so long, and the Nets, I mean, the Nets are the Nets. Um, it would be great for the league. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. One thing I agree with Bird, I guess that the final finish up with that when she said that she and players of her sort of generation and time frame have saved the league. You know, they didn't start the league, but she was like, we kept it going when it could have folded potentially. And I agree with that. And she's to be commended for that. And again, my hope is that Stewart goes to New York. That'll help the league further grow and just expand, because a lot of people don't like women's basketball and take shots at it and stuff like that. But if anybody watched that game or this series, the entire series, that's good basketball. And if you don't like it, fine, don't watch it. But that is damn good basketball, and I want to see more of it. So hopefully that's what happens. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.